Recording in progress. Okay. Hey, my antisocial butterflies. Today with me, I have, what is that? How does it go? I'm just an island boy. She's my
Please don't.
island girl.
Please don't. No.
She's my island girl. Reese's Vassal. How are you, my darling?
This island girl is looking a bit bummish, but hi, I'm good. How are you?
Never bummish. I'm doing well. No, we were just talking before I started recording, and Laura, Reese, I'm going to start the whole thing over. I just said your
No,
name.
that's fine. I don't mind it either way.
I just spilled the biggest secret. Your government name is like on this episode now. Shit.
I call
Reese.
my name. I call my name on my podcast because I'll be like, oh, and I'm talking to myself. Oh, Laura, you did it. And I'm like, shit, I just said my name.
Right? You're like, oh.
Because I naturally always actually talk to myself and I speak to myself in the third person. So
Yes, which is how we're going to dive into this. So anyway, Reese's just had a long day at work and we're like, it's a chill night and we're going to record this. So even though she thinks she looks bummy, she doesn't. So I can't see shit, girl. I'm like, it looks smooth and plucked and waxed on my, I don't really have eyebrows. They have never grown back since I started waxing them in high school. And then they just never grew back. Like maybe once in a while, I'll have like a stray that I have to pluck. That's it. This is how they're going to be for the rest of my life. So
really, that's interesting.
Yep. So when everybody's like, let's draw them on and let's make them thick, or I got to get them waxed, I'm like, here I am. This is it. This is what you got. So,
oh man,
I know. So enough about me. You had mentioned a podcast, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight, because I want my viewers to get to know you a little bit more, because I know you as like probably if they watch like most of my interviews, you were part of the legendary media group, and I'm literally just going through and having a chance to spotlight and highlight everybody that was in this group because they are all deserving of praise. But that's how we met, and you have definitely like taken off in your own right since the group started.
Yeah, it took me a while, but I did. I finally took that leap and stopped listening to that little second voice in my head, because I've grown to realize that it's not the first voice that's like, oh, I want to do this. It's that second voice that says, but should you? So I stopped listening to that second voice and I finally did my episodes. Like I just hit record one day and the first one sounded like ass. I'm not gonna lie. I can curse, right? You curse. I can curse.
Oh yes. Yeah. Are you kidding? This is like a swear welcomed environment. I don't know what you want to call it.
Swear friendly.
I was gonna say that, but I was like, why do I feel like I have like sectioned off mullet? It keeps okay. I'm like,
you see, that's why my hoodie is up.
Yeah, maybe.
Like if you look at, so I don't post a lot on TikTok. I'm like one of the watchers, but the few videos that I do post, I'm always in this hoodie. Like I love it.
Oh, now I need to like stalk your videos. I mean, Reese's and I.
It's a very short process. You won't be stalking for very long.
Okay, good. Well, good. I'll do it after we hang up on this. But no, Reese's and I are constantly sending each other TikToks and memes, and that's like all day long. So it's like nice to actually be able to see her face and catch up, because that's our form of communication.
So. It is, and there's so many friends that is how we communicate, because everybody is so busy, and you would swear we don't actually work, but the reason we have to communicate through post is because we are so busy. It's like, oh, this reminds me of so and so, let me send it to her, she might appreciate it. So I send her anything Sarah Jessica Parker fashion, like, you know, anything like that. I send it to Katie.
Yes, and any SJP, Lady Gaga, any fashion things, just send it my way at antisocialite Katie. Okay, so no, honestly, enough about me. We need to talk about you. So tell me, what is the name of your podcast?
The name of my podcast is Thoughts Outside Myself, a West Indian millennial podcast. Well, that part is actually just a tag. It's Thoughts Outside Myself.
You're like, period. Here we go.
Period.
Well, And I think it's wonderful because we're going to talk about your podcast and why it's that title, but also funny that we're talking about this. And it's very ironic because you're talking about the first voice is telling me to do this, and the second voice is the one that's doubt. So it's literally getting the thoughts out of here and putting it on the airwaves. So give us a
I swear I
description.
didn't do that on purpose, but that's funny.
Yes, I'm like, see, it all comes full circle. But give us a description of like what your show is about, because you just said it's like the West Indian millennial version of like talking about like taboo subjects and all that stuff. So kind of like
Yes.
walk us through the whole podcast environment and how you got started.
So I like to say that it's a safe space for the complex and taboo. So a very, very huge part of West Indian culture is how closely we play everything to the West. Like we all have a lot of the same traumas. We all have a lot of the same issues growing up. We all have a lot of the same like parentage and brought up, say, like we call it brought up, say. But a lot of the crap that we go through, our families and our friends and all this stuff, it's played close to the vest when it's so much easier and it's so much less harmful when you get those hard thoughts out of your head, which was not the original name. I could not think of a name for the life of me. I was like, one of them was pepper pot, because this like a pepper pot is a type of soup that we have down here and it's lovely. Everybody loves it. Another one was like spice or something like that, but it was playing on the, I guess, the notion that everything was a little bit too spicy to talk about. But that didn't catch on, thank you, Jesus, because looking back, it's like, so thoughts outside myself is literally like what the podcast is. It's all these thoughts that all of us, because the West Indies is made up of, sure, original Caribbean people, which are like the original descendants of the Tano people, the Arawak people, and then those of us that came over, the Afro-Caribbean people, Latin Caribbean, and then there's, of course, you know, Europeans that came over and settled as well. So, but we still have a lot of the same culture and the cultural stressors that we all have to deal with. So it's mostly me trying to get us to realize that we really aren't that different, like, you know, and it's easier if we help each other understand each other than just hate each other out of fear kind of thing. So that's pretty much the gist of it, just being a millennial and being a West Indian at the same time, because we're pretty traditional people. So sometimes being a West Indian, you want to stay, or your family wants you to be that traditional person that they've raised you to be, that everybody around you, like your neighborhood is, but you're a millennial. And millennials and Gen Zers kind of do things very differently than what everybody before us has, because it's like, fuck the rules kind of thing.
Absolutely, which we're going to talk about in 1 second, but I also didn't mention, or you didn't mention, where you live in the Caribbean, because that would actually be kind of helpful. So if you want to just quickly drop where you live, and then I do have like one thing to add on to that.
So I'm Jamaican. I was born in Jamaica, but I currently live in the Cayman Islands. I grew up here. So I think living here kind of gives me a unique position to do this podcast, just because, yes, the Caribbean all as a whole is very mixed, but here in Cayman especially is extremely mixed with so many different like cultures and people from different backgrounds. So it's the proximity makes it a lot easier to draw reference.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I was like, yeah, we didn't tell anybody where you actually were. So they're probably like, yeah, she's in Atlanta and we're just making this all up. No, I'm just kidding.
And then the fact that I don't really have a strong Caribbean accent doesn't help that either. So I'm like, oh yeah, she's in the States somewhere. No.
You're like,
I live
I'm
in the
currently in
Cayman Islands.
Minnesota. It's snowing outside, and that's why I have my hoodie on. No, so I was listening. So Reese's is currently in season 2 of her podcast, and one of the episodes is she's chatting with a friend about just like property. Like her friend lives in Toronto and, being in the Cayman Islands and just kind of like owning property, and how like the dream is to always be like, yes, I want a single home where I can like grow and do this. And like, that's the traditional way of thinking, that you want to like build your life on this single parcel of land. But what Reese is saying, but like, you're growing no agriculture. It's just a plot of land with a house and some grass on it. And like the way that we think as individuals of, being more sustainable for the environment and co-sharing spaces and doing all of this stuff. So I feel like it's very interesting for you to even just bring that up, talking about what your show's about, because I think like you can pull from so many different avenues of your life to be like, this is the crux that we're in. We want to be traditional, but we also want to, break the traditions and be the millennials and Gen Zers that we are meant to be. So it's kind of like interesting to, see that dynamic. Yeah.
It's kind of like tradition has broken so many things, from like mental health to the actual ecosystem. Like, yeah, you want to draw close to your culture and your background, but a lot of those things that we've done aren't really the best things for us as people, like individuals. And it's definitely not the best thing for the world, like the environment and social structures that upheld a lot of those negative notions kind of need to be broken. So
absolutely. Absolutely. So that's what I was like, wait, tell people who you are. Let me add this on. But so we're going to go back to you being like Jamaican, living in Cayman. You've also lived in the States for a little bit. So give us kind of a rundown of like your background and like how you've come to be this wonderful woman that you are.
So flight attendants used to love me and my sister because they would see our passports, they'd see the place of birth, and then they'd be like, oh, but you live here. So they used to have a time with us. So born in Jamaica, my sister and I, we were raised in Florida, Miami-Dade, 305 till I die. But my mother remarried and her husband and his whole life is here. So in I guess I would have been moving on to the 6th grade at the time. So I would have just started the 6th grade and then I moved here. And then because the school system is different, like over here, we recognize the European school system. So I kind of, instead of, correct myself. I would have been just starting the 5th grade.
Okay.
But because of the difference in the school system, when I came here, I went into what we call year 6. Because we don't say grades, because grades is like what you get on an exam. So I went from the beginning of my 5th grade year till I took that little break, got registered into school, then started year 6 in the winter semester.
Okay.
Yeah. And I've been here.
Ever since, thriving on the island.
Ever since, because after high school, I went back to Florida and I went to BCC and then went to college, university, and all that stuff in Florida. But now I'm here.
So how long have you been living back in the Cayman Islands since your departure as an adult from Florida?
This most recent stint, I have been living here. I came back home November of 2018.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
So how do you find, kind of your personality of growing up in the Caribbean? How do you see yourself like growing up stateside? Like, do you have that, kind of like, it's so funny because I was actually just on, of course, Instagram. Where else am I on? And there's a scene from Modern Family where Sofia Vergara is like, do you know how smart I am in Spanish? Like, it's so hard for me to translate everything in my head before I say it to you. You guys always, yes, and you guys always laugh at me, and I just want to be in my own home speaking my own language. Like, I am really smart. You know what I mean? So it's like, I feel like you have that interesting dynamic of like going into the school system in the US and then going into the school system in a whole different like European metric system way. Like, how do you find yourself like thriving in those spaces? Like, it's very different for sure.
Funny enough, that whole switch of the school system bit me in the ass. It worked well for me when I moved here, right? Because I was young enough to adapt. But when I went back to college, like it bit me in the ass because my professor for the whatever beginner mathematics we did in college, that 101 stuff, the algebra stuff, because of the method or the method on formulas that we are taught here, she was telling me my work was incorrect, even though the answers that I'm coming to is right, because she did not follow my formulas, that the way I've broken them down. So that kind of flipped around and bit me in the ass, because she didn't like me because of that. And I'm like, but miss, that's the exact same thing. And I like literally kind of taught her how I did my stuff. Needless to say, I failed the class not because the answers were wrong, but because I lost marks for how I arrived to them.
Serious?
Yeah.
But instead of being like, hi, I'm a college professor and like we're here to encourage different ways of thinking and doing this, and even explaining it to her, she was probably so embarrassed. That's why she failed you. That is awful.
Well, it was also mind you, in college I was actually a brute, but it was also like an accumulation of throughout the semester of those low marks. So when it came to that exit exam, it just, I don't know.
I don't like her.
I don't know. Oh, I don't like her either. But thank God I don't remember like what she looks like or anything like that. I do remember one professor, my African American history professor, Professor King. She was amazing. Unfortunately, I only had her for one semester, but because it's a smaller campus, it's community college, BCC. Well, it's now Broward College, but back in the day before they switched over, it's a small campus, so you kind of know the professors before you actually get them. So she was one of the more liked professors in the school. I definitely remember her. She was super awesome. Awesome. But to answer your question, yeah, that's for the most part, that was it, because I was moving from elementary school to elementary school, basically, from elementary school to primary. And I finished off those last, 6 months, and then moved into middle school, which would have been a new form of learning for me anyway, even if I were in the States. The only thing I really wish I could have continued was I was a cheerleader since the 3rd grade up until when I left. I was a cheerleader. I started off as the mascot because I was the tiniest one on the team.
Aww.
And then I became like an actual cheerleader. And so, right, my sister's 3 years older than me. So she moved on to middle school before I did, right? And she went to JFK and I would have gone to JFK. And she was on the drill team. And I was looking forward to being on the drill team. And I never got that chance.
How dare your mother get remarried and relocate you?
Right. They don't, the consideration, it wasn't there.
How dare she? I hope they're still married.
Yes, they are. Oh my God.
You know why? I'd be so pissed at her if she relocated you guys only to be like, we're no longer together, or he has passed on, or some like dramatic, tragic story. So at least, I mean, I don't wish that on anybody, but I'm glad that they're like still together, because you're like, all right, it was worth it, I suppose.
No, all jokes aside, I absolutely love my step family. The cousins that I grew up with, like I tell people all the time, and this is the way I can look at things, the way I kind of look at them. It's like, these people aren't blood related to me, but they kind of taught me that family doesn't mean nothing. Like, it has nothing to do with the blood. It's all about, the people who choose you and the people that you choose, kind of thing.
Yeah, which is so strong, because I feel like you find healthier relationships in that and you value them more, because just because you share similar DNA, I'm like, I keep going, but like you could be like, oh, that's my cousin or that's my aunt or whatever. That doesn't mean that you get along, and everybody's like, oh, family is everything, but families can be really toxic and draining. So
listen, let me tell you, India Irie once had, well, not once had, one of her songs from way before, right, years ago, like when she would have just maybe her first album still, and it goes, one shot to the heart without breaking the skin, no one has the power to hurt you like a kin. And like, that is the realest thing ever. Imagine the whole Western hemisphere now is breaking all these generational curses. Where do they all come from?
Right.
Exactly. Right. Like, the entire population of people can't be wrong.
Exactly. Well, because you learn from the home, not just in school. So you learn these toxic behaviors, or if your parents are growing up and arguing and you think that that's a healthy form of a marriage, or, things like that, you're going to continue those patterns and seek out a partner that's similar to your father, maybe, because you're like, that's what I have assumed, that's what love is. And I think that that's normal to scream at each other or to do these things. Or, my family's famous thing is, if we don't talk about it, it didn't happen. The denial game.
Which is the
So
same thing I mentioned earlier. West Indian families, they play everything so close to the vest and act like nothing ever happened. Sorry usually doesn't exist between West Indian parent and West Indian child. They kind of just start coming back around and acting all normal and extra loving. Oh, I bought you this. Oh, do you want this piece of cake, or da 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 da. But sorry usually doesn't exist in the West Indian home,
yeah, I
unless
want
it's
that cake.
the child saying, I'm sorry, or the parent saying, oh, say sorry, or something like that, but not the other direction.
No, you're like, I want the cake, but I also want a sorry. Like, come on, give it to me. Yeah, I know. But I do think
And the
that,
parents are like, let them eat cake.
but I definitely think that there's a lot of generational societal things that need to be broken. So I feel like for us, I definitely think it's with the assistance of social media and like having more of like free will, especially as women, to go out there and voice your opinion, because there's so many stories that you hear online that you're like, hey, I can actually relate to that. And somebody else went through that too, and I'm not alone. And I think that's like, with the help even of your podcast, you're talking about things that might be considered taboo, right? Because these are things that you're not allowed to talk about in a West Indian family. So you're like,
Yeah.
here I am to bring attention and awareness to it.
Right. It's so funny. I went through like a really rough time, not last year. In my head last year was still like 2019.
Yep,
So not
same.
I'm even confused now. So 2020, I went through like a really rough time, and that was around the same time that I started going on TikTok, because those videos that people would send over onto Instagram, which is how most of us get introduced to TikToks.
Yep.
And so I started seeing all these things that related to the situation and the heartbreak and the trauma and the manipulation and all that, and all those things, right, that you draw to. And thank God for algorithms, because it just, every stage of grief that I was going through, I swear to you, my TikTok For You page just went right along with it. And I started telling people like, yo, TikTok is out here saving lives. Like, that's my thing. I tell people that all the time. TikTok is out here saving lives, because one of the most beautiful things about, I guess, this era that we're living in is you truly understand the notion of globalization, because we are really all coming together. The world is getting so much smaller thanks to technology. And thanks to TikTok, we are all like starting to voice those things that were played so close to the vest, and we're giving each other permission to voice those things and to feel the hurt that we thought, well, I'm not allowed to feel the hurt because it never really happened, and it happened to me and I kind of remember it, but can I say anything about it? Am I allowed to cry about it? Like those kind of things. So it's kind of, you hear the stories and you hear the encouragement and the motivation behind it, and it gives you
You totally frozen. Reese's, come back to me. I'm gonna wait. I hope you're still not talking, because you're dropping a lot of good information and I don't want it to get lost. Oh no, we have officially lost her. I'm gonna wait till she comes back. Do 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 do. Do 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 do
bum bum.
No, you were dropping some really good knowledge and your screen had frozen, so I just saw your face like, but you were still saying a lot of great things, but then the audio went out and I was like, no. No, so kind of like where you left off is basically like, am I allowed to cry about this? Am I allowed to? And I was like, I hope that you can hear me, that like, don't keep going. So that's like where we last left off.
Am I allowed to cry about this? Yeah, no, I'm not gonna remember. Like what I remember, last thing I remember saying is that it gave you permission to feel these things. Did you hear
Yeah.
that part?
Yeah, like yes. And then it
Yay!
trailed off. Yes. Let's cry together. No, I'm just kidding. So no, but I think it's like fantastic. And I like crack up because everybody's like, oh, there's so many life hacks on TikTok that I would like, how did I exist before I knew this thing? So I think it's like
There
really
is
wonderful.
even clean talk. Like it's like these laundry hacks, these storage hacks, these how to scrub your tub until it's white as pearl kind of things. Like, and yeah, I'm on it because another part of West Indian tradition is cleanliness. So it's like I like to see it.
Yes. By the way, I just put my hand on my seat and it sounded like I farted and I didn't. So in case you heard that, I just for you and for the viewers, I was like, because that's
I
all.
didn't hear it.
Yeah, and now I'll like try to recreate it and it won't do it. Yeah.
They used to say nothing goes wrong when you want it to.
Yes. I'm like, this is my whole life. No, but I even like my mom today, I was talking to her because I came across this nurse who works in hospice. And she's like, she goes, I am a hospice nurse who is no longer afraid of death. Right. And that is like my number one fear. And I will have anxiety attacks over death. And I'm like, oh my God. And it kind of like is consuming to the point where I'm like, I'm thinking about death more than I'm actually like living. It's so freaking weird. I know it's like I have like really bad anxiety, but so I overthink a lot of things. But that is like my biggest fear. And so this
Mhm.
hospice nurse is like part two of like why I don't, I'm not scared of death anymore. And she was just talking about how this patient who was actually younger, she's like, he was actively dying. So I knew within a few hours he was going to have fully passed away.
Oh.
And she's like, there was a companion nurse who's like on my team that was with him the whole time. So I decided to just like remove myself from the room for a little bit and I'm going to go and sit in the car. So
You're
she did
frozen.
that. Huh? Say that again. Can you hear
Can you
me?
hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yes, I can see you now.
And so she was like, I'm just gonna like, the nurse was a different nurse was taking care of him. And she's like, I'm just gonna go sit in my car for just like a few minutes, right? She's like,
Mm.
30 minutes, or no, not 30 minutes, 30 seconds into sitting in my car, I literally hear his voice. And he's talking to me and was like, basically like, I'm gonna go, thank you, blah, 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 like whatever she said. And she's like, I knew at that moment because he was speaking to me and I could hear his voice that he was physically passed away at that point when he was done talking to me. And then the nurse had called and she's like, oh, so and so had passed away. She said, I know. Like, and it
Yeah.
was just like weird energy. And my mom is like super into ghosts and spirits and all this stuff. Like growing up on Cape Cod, there's a lot of like, Native American and pilgrim history. Like I am like 11th or 12th generation from the Mayflower. So when I tell you, like, we're pretty settled, like on the Cape still, right? But there's just so much history, and there's like definitely haunted houses on the Cape. And my mom has always believed in it, and she's like, "So do you believe me now?" I said, "I never." Without a doubt, like did believe in you. But then I was reading some of the comments to her, and one of them was just like, my nephew was 6 years old and he had died from a brain tumor. And the doctors had expressed to my brother and sister-in-law, this is how you want to explain to him the process of how he's dying. So the sister-in-law was just like, sweetie, when the angels come to play with you, it's okay to go then. He goes, I know, Mom, I already met them. Robert is my favorite. We're going to go build cars together. And Robert happened to be the dad's best friend growing up who passed away in his sleep from like an enlarged heart at age 21, and he was a mechanic. And this 6-year-old boy had no idea that this angel Robert was his dad's best friend growing up. And I'm like, that just gives me chills. And my mom's like, see, I told you. And then my mom's like, maybe I should get on TikTok now, because like my niece is always talking about it. And I'm always telling my mom, you don't have to get on Instagram. You would never post anyway, and it's just like a rabbit hole of things. But she's like, oh, maybe I should get on TikTok now. And so I sent her the video.
Everybody's on TikTok. There's like nothing but grannies on TikTok now. And they're
Yeah.
making dance videos and stuff. There's granny giving advice. There's TikTok is a beautiful place. Like
It really is. It
have
really
you been
is.
have you tuned into the council war with the Vance Lord and the Rogue?
No, I have not.
It
Send it
is.
to me.
I'll send you the commentary that is from the sisterhood.
Okay. Yes,
Yes.
please do. Yeah, so it's like so crazy. And then I like find things that I'm literally like snorting from laughing or cackling about. I'm like, this is so funny. Oh my God. To like deep stuff like this. And I'm like, what? And like,
Like,
it's just
what is
so
life?
yeah. And I'm like, and I really only started getting into TikTok, I would say about like 2 months ago, like actively watching videos. And all summer, these teenage girls that worked for me were like, you have to get on there. You have to get on there and post videos and do this stuff. And I'm like, nah. And I have like a few videos up now, but now it's like that's added it to like my regimen of like social media check, like Insta, Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok, Insta, Facebook, Snapchat. I'm like, what is my problem?
My favorite is definitely the Adele cover and the fan.
That's the cackle I'm talking about. Yes, it was here in this chair that the fan was propped on. And the thing was, okay, that was not staged. I was like, I am just going to make this video being like a parody because like so I live in like in a huge condo complex, right? And in my mailbox by accident there was like an Italian newspaper that was delivered and put into my mailbox, right? So I ended up bringing it upstairs and I was like, oh, I'll end up like bringing it to the door of like whoever, you know, because it said the unit number. It just got like stuck in mine. But I brought it upstairs with my other mail and I was sitting there and I'm like, newspaper. Adele just had a bunch of papers. Let me do a video.
No.
And it literally came off of that, like a wrong delivery in my mailbox had become that. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do like a fake, like low budget video. And it was just the outfit I was wearing that day. I was like, I have a chair I can sit in. I have a fan. It will blow on me because it was super windy in that video. And that was that. So when that fan fell down, that was not even something that I was controlling, but I was like, this was meant to be because that shit
Perfect.
was so funny. Uh-huh.
It was perfect. It was
Yeah.
chef's kiss.
And then my newest one, because like she just came out with the video for Oh My God, I was like, I need to create another low budget Adele film.
And that needs to be your thing.
I think so. I think so.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
needs to be your thing now.
Yep.
The antisocial Adele.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Yes, I think so. I know I'm gonna have to change my whole name and everything. No, I'm kidding. But I have like this like fake stuffed dog from when I worked at J. Crew. Like, I don't know, I left there like 12 years ago, and he's like my guard dog, right? So when she had like the massive horse, I was like, no, Henry is making an appearance in this video. And she was like holding a rope. No, I definitely took my phone cord, you know, my iPhone cord and like wrapped it around his neck and pretended. Like I was like, this is like super parody. And I'm like, if Adele ever sees this or sees these videos, like I hope she knows I'm obsessed with her. I'm not making fun of her. I'm just parodying her. So
Peter's gonna come after you for hanging a stuffed dog.
I know he's cute though. I've had him for like probably like 14 years, I'd say.
Damn.
I left there like 12 years.
Yo,
I mean,
we're old, you know.
I know it's gross. I say I'm like in my late 30s, and somebody's like, no, I wouldn't count that until I'm like 38. I'm like, I'm damn near close to it. So whatever. Oh my God. Enough about me, enough about my shit talking. So let's talk
I'm
more
sorry,
about
I can't help it. This is what I do actually. I interview, so like it's such a habit of just sitting here and be like, yeah, and then
right. And I'm like, let me tell you my deepest, darkest secrets, and you can put this on your podcast. This is a
I have
cross
that effect on
cast.
people.
Yes, no, you do. And it's like so funny of like people that I've actually interviewed who are normally interviewers. They're like, it's weird to be in this seat and talk about myself because I'm used to interviewing other people. So hopefully you don't feel like that, but I feel like it's more like a catch up session. And
So like
like,
when I make that face, that means you're frozen.
yeah, I'm not really frozen though. All right. So we're going to talk. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, I was like,
It
whoa.
does this funny thing where it will pause you and then it'll slowly trickle back in and then it goes really fast, like fast forward speed. Yeah. And then
Yeah.
it'll go back to normal.
I wonder how this recording is going to end up being. I'm like, let's see what
Oh
happens.
my God. That's okay. We can always just do it again. This is fun.
Yes, absolutely. And then we'll have like, yeah, but I feel like we're not going to have like as much oomph behind these questions being answered. I don't know. Because we're like, we've already done this. Go through it again.
Do you
Um,
forget we all deserve an Oscar?
yes, we do. I wish I had a trophy. I have something gold here. I'm like, and the Oscar goes to Reese's Best. This is like a candy dish, but it's gold, so it works.
My dish is full of olive seeds, so
I would
I'm not
like
going to
to
show you that.
thank, yeah. So all right, so I mentioned that you're in season 2 of your podcast,
I
right?
forgot that we were talking about my podcast.
Yeah, that's like the main reason why we're doing this conversation. So
Yes.
tell me about, because you mentioned about like, talking about spicy or taboo subjects, if you will, but like tell me some of the favorite subjects that you have talked about, like whether it's like yourself or if you've had somebody else on the podcast, like what have been some of your favorite moments in doing this?
Most definitely, my favorite thing to talk about is music. But this season, I'm trying something new. I'm trying to do the whole season as interviews, whereas last season it was all just me and my voice. But the challenge is now trying to keep it back to, because I think my longest episode last season was like half an hour. And like now it's like the shortest episode is like half an hour. And I don't understand it, which is it's okay because it's good stuff, right? But music is definitely my favorite thing to talk about when I was doing it solo, right? But now that I'm having people come on, it's like, oh, so tell me about yourself. Tell me where you're from. What's your West Indian connection? Like, how many islands are you mixed with? And so once I get them all juiced up and talking, it's like, tell me your deepest, darkest desire. Like,
And they're like, there's no escaping now. I must tell her. Yeah.
And it's so nice because these conversations, like the episode that just released, what's today, Tuesday? The episode that just released Sunday, it was a friend of mine who was on island. So she came over and we did it with the microphone and everything. We did like a proper setup. And the conversation literally had itself. Like I had notes and stuff, and it's like it didn't make any sense to look at it because it flew like by itself. And it was nice.
Good. I know, but it's that natural chemistry that I feel like lets you open up and allow your listeners to hear you in a different capacity. So any listener from season 1 to season 2 will see that you are able to adapt and flex to like, we're going to talk about this one topic or talk about music, to now involving people in here and hearing more about you through your connection to these people. So it's really nice to have that like harmony. So
Yeah.
season 1, like tell us about the music. Like what were you talking about? Were you talking shit? Were you praising songs? Were you like, oh my God, this was my first kiss? Like what were you talking about in season 1?
No, we did not do that. The funny thing is, you were like, "Oh, if I like to talk about myself," and I thought about it. I don't think I've actually did an episode of me talking about myself. Maybe I should, but that'll
Get
be
it
very.
out of yourself.
But thank you. I like that. But no, it was mainly, like I said, the podcast is mainly just us to see and highlight how much we are alike, especially considering that we share such similar backgrounds. We like tropical climate. We all have beautiful beaches. Some of us have like great forests and mountainous areas and stuff like that. So it's mainly me trying to highlight those similarities and appreciate the differences. And so when it comes to our music, like my last episode for season 1 was Music of the Caribbean, which featured all the traditional sounds and all the traditional music from the Caribbean, which was from, I guess, from the early 1900s to today and what the music has evolved to. So I spoke about zouk, I spoke about compa music, soca music out of Trinidad, I spoke about reggae music, of course, out of Jamaica, and all those similarities and where the majority of those influences were drawn from, which was a lot of a lot of, like, for instance, Cuba and Puerto Rico, like salsa music came from that fusion of the Cuban and Puerto Rican culture in New York, like, and a lot of it came from both of those, the peoples of both of those islands bringing their soul. So one of the influences out of Cuba is called Cuban Soul, which is the soul of Cuba. And then obviously the influence out of Puerto Rico kind of thing. And then the similarity in influence in music from the island of Hispaniola, which is Dominican Republic, and Haiti, which is like merengue beats. So that's why it's like you'll hear a lot of the similarities between the bachata music, and then some of the similarities between bachata and like compa, and then between compa and zouk music, because their originators were also tied, like, and zouk music is mainly from the French Antilles, like those French Dutch islands kind of thing, like St. Vincent and Martinique and St. Martin and all those. So what that episode was really about was like, hey, you're not that different. Relax. Because the thing is, we're very proud people. We're very patriotic people. And a lot of people are like, oh, patriarchy is like, when you think about people who are patriots, you automatically think of, the US bald eagle or something. Like, no, like patriot is, people who are proud of where they come from, they're proud of their flag, and we are all proud of our flags, but we are literally like almost the same. And it used to be like, oh, this, the only thing that separates us is a stop on the ship, which is not true, but true to an extent kind of thing, like balance. Another thing that I learned, which I thought was really interesting, I also spoke about Garfuna music, which is a style of music I was introduced to during LA Carnival, a Hollywood Carnival, maybe 2017. I met a Garfuna artist, and that was the first time I heard about the music, the first time I've ever seen the Garfuna flag. And so with being I guess around for the weekend, for the festivities, for the carnival, and you learn the social media handles and stuff like that. So I started following and I started listening to the music. And so one day I was like, what does this mean? And, in their language, it just means hot or something like that. And he's like, oh, but we're all just one Caribbean. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Because I knew nothing about it, right? And mind you, I have in Miami, I have a lot of friends from Belize. I have like a lot of friends here in Cayman. I have a lot of friends from Honduras and stuff like that, but I've never heard of Garfuna people. So within this, I learned that the Garfuna people were exiled people, freed slaves, exiled from St. Vincent to the lands of Belize, Honduras, Nicaragua, and there's another country. I can't think of it right now. It's going to haunt me. But yeah, and so they're the people who held on to the language, and a lot of them still speak the original Garfuna language.
That's incredible. All this history. This is why you need this podcast. Cause I'm like, I'll have to go back and listen to that episode, cause I feel like it was a while ago that I did listen in, but I'm like, just to like retain that information.
That was probably like August, maybe.
Yeah. And I feel like I don't even remember what I had for lunch yesterday. So I'm like, so it's like, it's nice to like hear about, the music history, because like, I have friends from a lot of different countries in the Caribbean. I have Dominican friends, Puerto Rican friends. I have, Trini friends. I got everybody like all different places, and to like even just recognize like, oh, that's soca music, or this is it, and I just try to like absorb all of it. So I've really grown to love the music, because that's like their heart and soul. So it's like interesting. And like some of the songs, I'm like, I have no idea what they're saying, but I love this beat and I'm gonna go with it. And then like I'm at the next party, I'm like, I remember this song, like this is fun, so it's like, I'm like, I don't know what they're saying, but it's
until
just like
eventually you find yourself singing along and you're like singing a whole different language. You're like, I don't know what they're saying still, but
yeah, like I can definitely sing Spanish songs like word for word and have no problem. And I'm like, I totally get it, even though if like I understand when it's written versus like when it's spoken to me. Like I will probably understand like every like 1 in 5 words, but I could like kind of get what people are talking about if they're speaking Spanish to me. You know,
Yeah.
I pick up like what they're saying, but I'm just like trash at like speaking it back. But I'm like in songs, like it's a nice way to like kind of incorporate. And I'm like, now I know what they're talking about, you know. So
Like you get
I,
the gist of it.
yeah, and I think like it's so funny because people will actually say that math is like the most universal thing because math is always the same, even though you proved otherwise in this, you know, earlier session. But I really think that music like truly is such a universal thing, more so than art or fashion. Like fashion, like it will
Mhm.
really determine your cultural or, you know, time period, you know, of where you are and what you're doing and how you express yourself. But I feel like music is like such a universal thing. And
It
you know,
is.
so it's really nice to like be able to hear that, like, you know, you do have somebody saying like we are all one Caribbean, you know, even though you do have like outliers of like, oh, it's
Mhm.
identifying as this, it's identifying as that, it's this. No, it's all kind of melded together, so it's
Because
pretty
you have your unique bits. Of course, you have your unique bits, but at the base, we're kind of all connected by like, the same string.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. It's a nice way to think about that. You are, even if you have to take a boat or fly there, that's a long ass string, but you're still connected.
You're still connected. And the thing, and you know what proves it is that when you go to like when an islander moves to a major metropolitan, city, like for instance, I went to LA. The only thing I wanted to find was another West Indian. I didn't care what island they came from because I knew that West Indian would understand me. And that proves that yes, we have our intricacies, but we are basically the same at our base.
Yeah, which is nice because I'm like, I feel like if they have been living there or if they're visiting, you can kind of share similar experiences of like, okay, we were both a stranger to this place at one point, and how do we navigate based on how we were raised and how we live every day to now being in this
Yeah.
space where it's completely different. You're in a smog-filled city.
And where can we find our food?
Exactly. And I feel like LA, you'll have a lot of different options. New York, you'll have a lot of different options. But, you know, it's interesting to see like where people come together. Like Boston, the food scene is, I'm not even a foodie, but like the food scene's not all there. You know what
But
I
I'm sure
mean?
you can find yourself a Jamaican restaurant if you need to.
There's one down the street.
Precisely.
And
You
it,
can
but
go to
it's,
any metropolitan city and find a Jamaican. You can go to
yeah,
Alaska and find a Jamaican.
yeah. And it's like super cliche. It's called Jamaican Me Hungry. So, mhm.
I promise you, we really are more creative than
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. But there'll be Ethiopian restaurants. There'll be, you know, all different types of food. I mean, our Chinatown here in Boston is like this, the US, or is it the world's like second largest Chinatown, like outside of China, you know? So it's
Wow.
like, yeah, like it's not as like big and widespread as you would see in like San Francisco or LA, you know, but it's the density of people that
Hmm.
exist there, you know, so
Oh,
they do
yeah.
say it's the
Okay.
second largest. So, you know, even having a space there where you do it, it's funny because you're literally in, if you're driving down the street, like you see the state house, right? So that's where, you know, all the government officials will work. And it's this whole like
Hmm.
golden dome on Beacon Hill, which is one of like the richest neighborhoods and so much history because Paul Revere was there and George Washington, all these people, right? Then you
Hmm.
literally go down a few blocks and you're seeing all of these signs, neon signs, just straight Chinese. And then they're like have like a little like English, like, you know, translation, you know, so it's like so fun to,
And
even though, yeah, we're a small city, but you see like the difference.
I absolutely love that about like Asian cultures is that they're like, you are not going to gentrify us.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. They are so strong and they're so firm in their identity. And I think it gives their children a great starting point, a
Absolutely.
great place from. I mean, even though they're like, oh, Asian cultures, they're very strict parenting and stuff like that. Yeah, okay, right. But at the end of the day, you still are raised within a firm structure of culture, within a firm structure of tradition kind of thing. And it gives you that base to be like, I've experienced this.
Yes.
This is a great understanding of the world. What can I build on it? Instead of having to build your own understanding of the world when you become an adult.
Yes. Because I think a lot of us lack that, or with the generational curses that are brought onto us so nicely, you don't truly understand the world and the reality of what it is. You're understanding it from the reality of your parents or grandparents or whatever other family members have raised you and instilled in you. So then you go out
from trying to do things in spite of those parents and grandparents or whoever else raised you.
Yes. Yeah. So it's really interesting. I mean, it's pretty cool to have that experience of like being here. And that's what I'm saying. Like you literally have statues of like Paul Revere, and then you're down 3 blocks and it's Chinatown, just like that, with all the restaurants and the food and shops and, all of this stuff. But, the beautiful thing about working for the company that I did work at for almost a decade is we had a lot of international tourists come through, especially students. And a majority of our clientele were Chinese or Korean with some Japanese. It just depended on like which country, but I got to meet people from like all over the world, and I feel like there's so many stereotypes about everybody, every country, every ethnicity, and like those will still ring true. And you can laugh all day long about them because I'm like, even that show, it was on like years ago. I don't even know if it's still on, and it's called Fresh Off the Boat. And it was this family that like relocated, they're an Asian family that relocate from like Washington, DC to like a suburb in Florida. And they're like the only Asian family full of like white kids, and then like just like adapting to culture and life there when you're not surrounded with people that have like similar backgrounds to you, so it's like interesting to see, but you get to like really grow and appreciate different cultures through the eyes of these people, so I'm like, I could spend a half hour with you in the store and I'm going to sell you this bag or this wallet or whatever it is, but I learned so much about you and where you came from and how you grew up. And
where else you can do that?
On your podcast at the mall, you said?
At the bar, but the podcast as well.
I was like, what, on That's Outside Myself podcast? Yeah.
No. Oh God. Another great take on, the insides of the Asian family, the immigrated Asian family, is a show on Netflix called Kim's Convenience. It's a show out of Canada because there's a huge Asian, like when I say Asian, I mean also brown Asians like Indians and stuff. There's a huge population there in Toronto. And this show is basically highlights the life of this daughter of the immigrant family from Korea who is now going to college and all this stuff. And she's experienced life, or she's grown up within the life of being a Canadian, but her parents and her family is still that's very similar to so parents are still very strictly, not strictly, but very traditionally Korean, right? So they'll still eat the traditional Korean foods, like the mom will still do, or the roles within the marriage are still very traditional and stuff, while she's viewing it from both angles,
Yeah, I know. Well, it's interesting. And I think that's also the beautiful thing about having different cultures like within a city limit, even though it's like sometimes it is isolating because you're like, these people don't look like me, they don't act like me, this is not, if I go into this friend's home that culturally is different than me, I might not relate, it's isolating to me. But I also think that's the beautiful thing, is that like, because everybody's so different, you get to learn about people.
But you got to be open to it.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, like, and just even that's what, when you were saying like brown Asian, like I hate it when people are like Chinese people equal Asian. I'm like, India is part of Asia, right? That like Kazakhstan, which is literally, they look Chinese, but they speak Russian, right? I'm like, you don't understand that, like, I think Asia is like consists of like 38 countries. I'm like, are you guys fucking numb? Like, people are just like always assuming like, if you're Asian, you're Chinese. I'm like, but even
India
like
is the largest country in all of Asia.
Yeah. I'm like, get out of here. It's the ignorance. I'm like, get out.
It really is the ignorance for me, because it's kind of like, I will pay for you to get a damn passport. Leave your town. Just leave your
Yes.
town. Better yet, just go on Google. Google is our friend.
It is a free search engine. You pay $0 for it.
Right. So ignorance at this point is a choice.
Yes. Yeah. And I think all of us, like, no matter how woke you are or what culture, ethnicity, like every single one of us has opportunity to learn about others, you know? And I think that, like you said, being open to that is really nice. Like being open to being like, okay, well, like, what's my connection? What's my passion? I love music.
Mhm.
Okay, well, Reese has actually just taught me a lot about music from the Caribbean, like, or Caribbean, sorry.
Caribbean is good. It's quite
I
fun.
know it's like interchangeable, but I still am like, let me respect it for how you call it. I actually have a friend in Aruba and I sent him a voice. No, I texted him and I was like, you have to send me a voice message on how you say it. He's like, well, Caribbean, but you can also say, I'm like, don't say it's either one or the other. And you're like my friend and you have to tell me, you know.
Just ask any West Indian, where are you from? I'm from the Caribbean. And they'll tell you. But then it's like the easiest thing is just say West Indies.
Yeah.
Like West Indian people say we're from the West Indies.
Yeah. And then that's it. And then you can figure it out on your own if you don't know where the West Indies are.
It's like mainly when we're talking to people who aren't from the Caribbean, where we'll be like, I'm from that place, right? I was having a conversation with a friend who's actually 2 episodes down the way. And he said something about, because he's a Brooklynite transplant here living in Cayman Islands now. And he said something about, because Brooklyn is such a huge Caribbean like melting pot itself. So he drew reference to, I already know, when you go into the Jamaican restaurant, if the lady at the front says she's not having the oxtail gravy, you don't ask her no questions, you just take it or whatever. So he kind of like slipped up and said, yeah, I know all about the place, and then he kind of made mention to just isolating Jamaica. And I was like, no, it's not just the Jamaican culture. It's like the Caribbean. Oh, that's not what he said, the Jamaican diaspora. I was like, no, it's the Caribbean diaspora. Like people hate it when you say, you draw any reference to the Caribbean and the only thing you say is Jamaica.
No, it goes so far beyond that.
Do you know how many sovereign nations we have in the Caribbean and how many territories yet? Like, come on, man.
Again,
yeah, I
Google.
had to correct him really quickly.
And you're like, I will end this podcast right now if you do not learn something, come on now, be better. Better. But I also think that, growing up in America, for as diverse as our people are, there's also like ignorance like that trumps that, so it's like, yeah, like you can have that melting pot in New York, and Boston is a small city, but is becoming more and more global as the days go on, and LA and Miami and, all these major cities.
But you get to the middle of the US and it's kind of like
the heartland of America. That's not even a heart. That's like me. But then you have the people that, you must speak English. We're in America. I'm like, we don't actually have a national language, right? So it's like, while you have born and no, it's all right, but like people have been like born and raised to think that English is the national language of America. We actually don't have a set language. And I'm like, and you think about everybody from every corner of this world, every country, pretty much. I don't even know how many countries there are. What is it?
Over 200.
I want to say 238.
Like just over 200, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was like 238, but then I just mentioned like 38 earlier. So I was like, am I just like hooked on 38? And because I said I was
it's like
almost 38.
Less than it's not that many, but it's over 200.
Hey Siri, how many countries are there in the world?
Here's an answer from worldometers.info. There are 195 countries in the world today.
I made that up. 195.
Siri's wrong. She's not Google. Siri's wrong.
Okay, I'm gonna go on Google now because how many countries are there? No, it says 195.
Oh, wow. Wow. Considering that they demoted Pluto from being a planet, I don't trust that answer because for some reason in my head, I've always understood it to be like 205 countries or something like that.
Yeah, that's so rude. And then like there's a list. So I'm gonna read you all 195. No, not really, but
Oh, look at the
I
time.
know, right? You're like, I'm tired. No, but it does say that not on the list. Okay, so it says not included in this total count of 195 countries are Taiwan, which that is shocking. But it says the United Nations considers it represented by the People's Republic of China. Interesting. Then the Cook Islands, and then I don't know how to pronounce this, it's Niue. So I'm not even going to try to butcher it, are both states in free association with New Zealand, which are members of several UN specialized agencies and have been recognized as fully treaty-making capacity, but are neither member states nor non-member observer states. And then there's dependencies, which are dependent territories, dependent areas, dependencies, and areas of special sovereignty or autonomous territories. And then other countries recognized by the United Nations but are not being self-governed. What?
So they're basically doing to countries what they did to Pluto. I don't trust them.
Exactly. I miss Pluto.
I miss Pluto.
They're trying to bring it back. I just heard that on the news.
That's what I
Okay.
heard too, because it has a moon or something like that.
Yeah. I miss it. Can we send some people there though? Because I would love that. Okay, so I'm
Can you
wrong.
send me there? Wait, no, it's shit and cold. Don't send me there. Send them
Yeah.
there.
You're like, if there's a tropical planet, like, okay, so I lied to you. So there's actually 48 countries in Asia, so 10 more than I assumed. But there's 54 countries in Africa, 48 in Asia, 44 in Europe, 33 in Latin America and the Caribbean, 14 in Oceania,
14.
and 2 in North America. But Canada, the US, and Mexico. Mexico is actually in North America.
Mexico is Central America.
It's central. I lied to you.
Yeah.
I need to go back to school. I need to go back to school. Wait, what? Oh my God. They consider it central?
Come out of the rabbit hole. Come back to me.
I always grew up thinking that, or being told in school, so then in turn thinking it, that North America was Canada, the US, and Mexico.
Mexico, as long as I've known, Mexico is Central America.
That's crazy. I'm stupid. Time to end this podcast. I'm awful. I'm like, ugh, whatever. So, okay,
So
back
we
to your
just learned
show.
a viable lesson. Google is our friend.
I know. See, but I'm willing to learn and admit here on the interwebs what an idiot I am. And you froze. Okay, you're back. Okay.
Well, I wouldn't say idiot. I would just say misinformed.
Thank you. Thank you.
I got you, bro. I got you.
It's a classy response in my lapse of failure at geography. So tell me, what else is on the list? Because you did say that you have a couple more episodes in the arsenal for season 2. So what else are we going to be tapping into? And tell us all the juicy stuff, like spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. So my whole goal for season 2 is just to show all the different facets of being from the West Indies, which is why one of the reasons I had my Brooklynite transplant friend who now lives in the Cayman Islands on the show, because it's like, no, he's not West Indian, but he, even though he didn't grow up in the West Indies, he grew up around the culture, like, in a whole nother country. So I wanted to show all the different highlights of, the impact of being West Indian. I have, the episode with my friend who's from Toronto, Trini, but from Toronto. And that's where she grew up. I kind of share, I guess, a similar background with her being born on the island and then growing up outside of the country. So we're not considered first generation, but we aren't islander enough to be like the people from our islands is like, you sure you're from here? Like, yeah, like, yes, like, yes.
You're like, check my birth certificate.
Bam.
Right.
Yeah. So
But
I
yeah,
want to highlight all the different, for instance, I have a friend who's from Sri Lanka and he now plays cricket in Sri Lanka. But he grew up here in the Cayman Islands. I think I can't remember if it's like his whole life, but he definitely spent a good chunk of his life here in the Cayman Islands. So yeah, this is home for him, but his family, his heritage is from Sri Lanka. And so I want to bring him on to spin that angle as well. And that's the only spoiler you're gonna get.
all right.
But that's along the gist of what season 2 is going to be.
Oh, good. Thank you. I'm like insider info. Appreciate
If
you.
I can get him to respond to me, God damn it.
I think we should start an online petition and get him to do such.
Oh, it's okay. West Indians are known for, timing not being the best, but it'll work out.
He's
It will
busy
work
playing
out.
cricket. He'll get to you when he can.
Honestly, that's what happened. We were trying to schedule for December, but he went into a bubble for a tournament that they were in, and then Christmas and then New Year's. So now it's kind of like waiting for life to catch back up kind of thing.
I get it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you made time for me too, because I'm like, this has been long overdue to actually like get to hear about your podcast. But now officially you have an Instagram page for it, so we can promote it more. I was just waiting for that. That's all I was.
It took me long enough.
It
So season 1, I directed everybody to my Instagram page, which is Reese's Vassal. And so every single episode, I'm like, I need to develop my own social media. If you have any ideas, blah, blah, blah. And then finally, season 2 rolled around, and I don't know what wind of inspiration hit me, because the longest time I didn't develop social media for it because I thought the handle Thoughts Outside Myself would have been just extremely too long. But I ended up just doing Thoughts Outside Myself podcast. So that's now the handle, all one word. It's spelled exactly like it sounds.
perfect, because I was going to ask you to drop your handle. So thank you for doing what I was going to ask of you anyway. So if we're on the same wavelength, even if we're not in the same space,
but we're on the same time zone, so that counts for something.
That does. I know. I have another interview that I have lined up for this week, and he's in London. And I'm like, are you 5 or 6 hours? We're trying to figure it out. And he's like, let's do 2 o'clock, or whatever. That was such a bad British. But no, but he's like, all right, let's do 2 o'clock. And I'm like, all right, that's like 8 or 9 in the morning my time, but got you. I'll be up, I'll be ready, all this stuff. But I'm like, at least we're in the same time zone, so it's good.
Your next series has to be accents. I love it when you do them.
It's so awful.
No, they're great. I love it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what was it, season 1 or season 2? I think more season 1, but like I would always like open my show with some stupid accent or stupid prop. Like I'd be Southern one day, British the next. Like I'm just like, who am I? Although like
it's called character development. You just need to name them now.
That's right. I know. And you were part of that. I believe you were on that conference call, our LMG conference call, where Jason Lee from Hollywood Unlocked was on there, and we did our script reads. And he was like, oh my God, I was expecting you to be like kind of a Karen because you're the only white one in the group and you need to like develop a character. And I'm like, I am not trying to get canceled before I even get put on, sir. Thank you, but I cannot be doing that because I don't want any of my friends to hate me, strangers to hate me. I can't be like being Karen, racist.
To me, if your friends hate you because of a character,
true,
they clearly aren't really friends.
Yeah,
and that just means they don't really know you.
That's true.
But we're not going to dive back in again.
No. But then he was like, oh, you want to see what happens when you try to cancel me? And he gets up from his kitchen table, goes in the other room and comes back with a shotgun. And he's like, that's what the fuck's going to happen. I'm like,
yeah, That was literally about to be like, did he grab his gun?
Yeah, he did. And I was like, well, I don't pack any heat and I don't want to get
I pack a
canceled.
lot of heat. Sorry. Sorry.
Which are some of the memes that we send each other. No, but I was like, I'm not trying to get canceled before I get put on, but maybe I feel like those characters in which I've already done could be developed a little bit more. But I'm never going to be a Karen. I can't.
Yeah.
Karen,
No.
anti-Karen nation over
Don't
here.
do it, girl.
Must not. So, okay. So one more.
Anti-Karen, Karenite.
I love it. I'm changing my IG handle tonight. No, I'm not really. So when we go to your IG page, how can we listen to you? Do you click the link in the bio? Like, where do we find you to actually listen to you? Tell us, girl.
So I've gotten to the point where I record and post now. So, but I think that I'm also available on Spotify and other listening platforms. However, my link and platform of choice is BuzzFeed. So go on to the Instagram page and the link is in the bio and you can follow the link to all of the episodes starting from season 1 and go all the way down. And it's very binge worthy. I have friends that say, oh, I listen to it while I'm at the gym. My family members, they're like, oh, I listen to it while I'm going to work. And I'm like, no, you need more time than that. You need more time than that.
And you need 100% focus. How dare you be distracted while listening to me?
Exactly. Suppose you get cut off.
Yeah.
And then you blame me.
And I am not one to be blamed. You are. That's what you have to tell them.
Exactly. I feel like that should have been like a line out of a Seinfeld episode or something.
I love Seinfeld. I just actually started binge watching again recently. Like, I mean, I haven't actually like ever binge watched it, but like there's be like marathons on TV, but I grew up watching Seinfeld and loved it. And then one day I was on Netflix. I was like, oh, maybe I should just binge it. Cause I mean, I feel like at this point, you know, because in 2021, I was like unemployed for 6 out of the 12 months being a stay-at-home daughter, which was fabulous. But I feel like I truly have watched everything on Netflix. Like Netflix is like, you're all caught up. We have nothing new for you, Katie. Go home. And I'm like,
I finished Netflix multiple times over during 2020, 2021. 2021, I kind of like by the end of summer, I basically like stopped watching Netflix because there was literally nothing else on there for me to watch.
It's sad. And I've never been one. I was talking to somebody the other day. I've never been one to sit and like binge watch shows. I always have been so busy, or I don't have time to sit after work, or I'm watching the news, or I still have all these things. And I'm like, now I have all this free time. And I'm like, oh, what am I going to do tonight? Watch TV.
Oh, I don't watch the news. That I don't do.
I need to stay informed because I'm all about current events and just like knowing what's going on in the world. Because again, I'm open to hearing stuff. I mean, most of it is sensationalized tragedies, truthfully. But there's some good stuff on there. But I was like, I need to know what's going on. Like, and also I'm like, you know, there's a grocery store that's right down the street and they've completely ripped up the middle of the parking lot. And I'm like, what are they building in the middle of the parking lot? And I'm like, I need to go on the news and find out what they're doing. I'm nosy in that sense. So like, is it going to affect my life at all? No. But Home Goods is in that same parking lot and I drive there.
I don't think that's nosy. I think that's necessary information.
I'm trying to be informed of my community. And also I'm like, what the fuck are you building here? No, it's just like so odd because it's like literally in the middle of the parking lot. So I'm like, are there pipes underground
They're
that we're
building
trying
the beacon to it's the beacon to the other world.
Oh my God, we're going to Narnia. Did you ever read the books?
Yes. Yeah, I'm still waiting on the last movie. There's supposed to be a last movie and I'm still waiting on it.
Well, maybe it will be on Netflix soon and you'll have something new to watch. It's all right. No, it's all right. But you were like this, Frozen.
Well, the Witcher season 2 just
You were like,
to the prayer god.
the last movie now. No, I'm kidding. No, it's all right. I know it keeps cutting out like here and there, but I'm like, it's totally fine. No, my mom's obsessed with The Witcher.
Oh, this is gonna be so interesting when you watch it back.
I need to watch it and check it out. Oh my
You
God.
haven't? Well, that's my whole like everything. I love everything like supernatural, sci-fi, which
Oh
is
my
so
God.
funny because when I
Yeah.
was younger, I was not like a sci-fi person. Like X-Files would come on and I'd be like, okay, no. Like, Tales from the Crypt would come on and it would scare the lights out of me. Like,
Yep. Same.
no.
Same.
But
I'm like,
now
no, I'm the
I
same way.
absolutely love it. I absolutely love it.
See, I'm still not into it. Like you and my mom would get along so well. Like my brother, my mom, my niece, like they're all into that stuff. Even like my niece Hayden is like big into Teen Wolf right now, and she's trying to
You
make
mean
me
your
watch.
mini me?
Yes,
That's your
my
mini
mini me.
Yes.
Even though
You're
she's taller than I am now. So sad. I'm like a 12-year-old has like towered over me. It's kind of, yeah,
which
unfortunate.
is most of the younger cousins in my family.
Isn't it
So
awful?
I understand the feeling.
Yeah. And I always, people are like, do you drink coffee? I'm like, no, it stunts my growth and I'm short enough as it is. And they're like, what kind of response? You could have just said no. I'm like, well, no, but I don't drink coffee. I just have like so much like natural energy. I'm like, I don't need that shit. But yeah, no, they're into like Teen Wolf, Witcher, this, that. I'm like,
I love Teen Wolf. I am so sad it's over.
Maybe one day it will come back.
It's so crazy to me that when I started watching Teen Wolf, I definitely was looking at it from like, because I went to Full Sail, right?
Yeah.
So like when I watch shows after Full Sail, I kind of watch them through the Full Sail lenses. And I'm like, thinking casting wise, I'm like, they really didn't cast Dylan O'Brien as the lead for this show because I felt that he was a stronger actor. But then as the show progressed, you realize I guess the depth in acting skill that you need to play Styles. And I'm like, okay, never mind. They did a good job because I don't think anybody else could have played Styles the way Dylan O'Brien did. It was perfect.
See, I watched one episode because Hayden, when I was back home, 2 weekends ago, she's like, can you just watch a couple episodes with me? I'm like, one. I will watch one. And it was literally the first one. And I'm like, no, I'm anxious. I can't watch anymore. And she's like, all right, fine. At least I got you to watch one. But I was like, I am not getting trapped into this like teen drama of a werewolf. And
it's
like
only 5 seasons.
Yeah, I don't know if I could do that. Like if she literally was like, Katie, I will never talk to you again. I'm like, fine, I'll watch it. She still yells at me for like not seeing Frozen, which I know it's weird. I still haven't seen it, but she's like,
don't worry. I have a friend who every time I see him, I tease him because he's not watched Moana.
See, Moana, I love. That shit slaps. Mm-hmm.
Every time I see him, I'm like, Gypsy, have you seen Moana yet? Every single time. He's like, no, man, I go and watch it, man. I go to watch it, man.
I would literally direct his body to the closest couch, turn the TV on, and be like, you're going to be here for the next 2 hours.
Right? Because Moana is such a great movie.
Great movie.
And so much like amazing music.
Yes. No, I love it. I mean, I love Alessia Cara and she sings in there and I'm like, I love her. She's amazing. I love that. I definitely cried at Coco, like grown ass, like full human tears. I was like,
ma'am, I was 2 minutes into Encanto and I was bawling.
I still haven't watched it. Mm-hmm. Hayden's watched it 5 times without me and I'm like, I told you to wait for me, but it's okay. But I'm gonna watch it.
Waited for you for 5 times and you've not showed.
No, she just never told me she was watching it and we live an hour and a half apart from each other. So I was like, you could have at least told me. I would have driven down to watch it with you. Or
Google is our friend. The internet exists. You know what we used to do before all of this became a thing? We would watch shows by ourselves, but with each other.
Yes, that's true. I'm gonna force her to be on FaceTime and watch it with me then. I'm just kidding. I'm like, I don't know. But yeah, I have to watch Encanto. Are you there?
This is my Frozen face.
I know you're. I'm not frozen. I'm just posing like how you're frozen. Meh.
You know what you sound like when it's frozen? You sound like Dory trying.
Wait, who do I sound like? Because it just cut out again. Come back to me. There you are. But we have no audio. Who do I sound like? Dora the Explorer or Dory?
No, I was saying you sound like Dory.
Meh,
When she's
meh.
trying to whale.
Yeah, I know. That's like my second language. All right. Well, we'll get this wrapped up then because I've taken up so much of your time and which I love talking to you, of course. But before we freeze any time further, so I just want to get this wrapped up. But please, are you frozen or are you faking it now?
Making it.
Feeling, but I was like, stop it. All right. So drop your IG handle one more time so people know where to find you in case they didn't go to their phone and write it down or search for you.
I apologize. That was so lame. And that's your
No,
warning. I'm gonna give you the IG handle, but it's gonna be lame stuff like that.
No, I love it because I definitely would have done something like that too. So it's not lame at all.
So my personal IG handle is Reese's Vassal. That's at Reese's Vassal, ReeseVassell. And the podcast social media handle is at Thoughts Outside Myself Podcast. All one word, spelled exactly how it sounds. Because if you think I'm going to spell all of that out right now, you're crazy.
Yeah, you're like THOUGH. No, I'm just kidding. Amazing. Reese's,
Yeah, no.
thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me and dive deeper
I
into
made it, Mama. I made it.
Yeah, you have won the Oscar. That's like a stupid joke that we had the other day in our DMs. But no, thank you so much for sharing a bit of your life with us. I appreciate it. And guys, make sure to go check her out, listen to her, follow her. Don't stalk her, but like, you know, like become a fan of her because it's definitely worth it. And anybody that goes to the Cayman Islands, Reese's will have some good places to tell you where to go and to do. You're gonna have to put
ocean.
Yes, you're gonna have to do a little tour guide podcast
Right.
for anybody that like you're trying to connect to West Indian culture. Here's
That's a good idea. I want to do an island hopping episode because I want to island hop. Eventually, when I start blogging for the podcast, like blogging.
I was gonna say it needs to have visuals to it, not just audio. Yeah, so good. Glad that you already have that.
We'll work on it.
You're amazing, girl. Thank you so much, and I'm sure I'll DM
No,
you.
you're amazing. Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
it was so much fun. I finally made it onto the antisocial socialite.
Yes, well, it was like way long overdue, and now this is going to be like the start of season 4. I was like, obviously. Now all I was waiting for was the IG. No, I'm kidding, not really. But I was like, no, you're deep into like season 2. I was like, it's time to go. Like, so I'm ready for you.
But yay! I hope I lived up to all of your expectations
and more.
You know, I'm gonna leave a comment block outside the door. You know, just leave your little comments, and you know, we'll take them into consideration.
Absolutely, I love it. Well, thank you so much, girl. Big kisses, big hugs to you, and I'm sure I will.
Oh, so much love. Oh, that was a crooked heart.
I know. I'm like, it looks cute from like my side, but then I'm like, I'm like, that's my double chin. You're the best.
Aww.
All right, I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.